We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. Yes, we're here once again Monday night on a live show taking your live questions in. So if you have a question you'd like to ask the Sheikh, please send it via the WhatsApp or the email address, or alternatively, why not give us a call and inshallah me and the Sheikh will be able to discuss your question. I'm your host Mohsin Shah, and joining me is Sheikh Ali Mar. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you this evening?
Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. Sheikhna, we're very, very close to the Hajj season, and the last couple of episodes we've been discussing Hajj. We looked at the different, methods. We looked at the different, the ihram and what you can do, what you can't do. We also looked at where to put the ihram on from. We discussed niyyah. Let's continue our discussion and let's discuss the tawaf. So what is the criteria for tawaf?
Inshallah. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. Tawaf initially, as mentioned previously, that when you enter the holy city of Mecca to perform the Umrah with your ihram on your body, the first act is to start with Tawaf. So now we're going to talk about the Tawaf in your Umrah, in which allows you to enter the holy city of Mecca. Of course, as we know that Tawaf is part of the worship, ibadah. Thus, the first act is niyyah, the act or the intention in which the one should have before performing the tawaf. Number two is to be tahir from the major impurity, which means janaba, and then for the ladies, hayd and nifas. And of course, to be also pure from the minor impurity, in other words, which is not having the wudu.
Okay.
So to have the wudu is a must for the tawaf and the salah after the tawaf. Number three is the clothes in the body should be all tahir, so purity of the ihram, in other words. Number four, for the male individual to be circumcised and to have the khatna, in other words.
Okay.
Say. So that's important as well for the one who wants to perform the Hajj.
Wow.
Because we have this issue that some converts or reverts, they are not actually
Circumcised.
circumcised. So they need to actually have that before the Hajj season. And we don't want to scare them, basically. But these are the conditions of the Hajj and the Tawaf and so forth. Number five is to cover the private parts as we do in the salah. So the same ahkam for the salah of the one who, the ahkam libas al-musalli, the clothing of the musalli, to be also observed. Number six, that the tawaf is performed between the holy Kaaba and the Maqam Ibrahim, as we mentioned last week.
Yes.
That 26 yards from the Kaaba. And away from the Kaaba, you can actually do the tawaf in this, or as a sign, the Maqam Ibrahim, which is away from the Kaaba as well. That's your maximum boundary in which you can do tawaf within this area. Outside, you're not allowed, as I think precaution mentioned here, except in the case of difficulty and discomfort, overcrowded and so forth. Then you can go outside this zone of the tawaf and do it just away from the Maqam Ibrahim or the 26 yards. Otherwise, as a ihtiyat wujubi, you must do it within this area between Maqam Ibrahim alayhi salam and the Kaaba. Number seven, the Hijr Ismail should be, of course, to your inside your tawaf, to your left side. So I've mentioned the half-circled area where you have the grave of I think mentioned Ismail alayhi salam and Hajar, so it has to be within your tawaf. So you shouldn't go inside the Hijr Ismail and come outside of it. You have to do the tawaf outside this Hijr Ismail. So the Hijr Ismail, or that half circle, to be on your left side, inside your tawaf. And number 8, that the one's entire body is outside the Holy Kaaba. So you shouldn't do what, for example, the believers do when they go to the ziyarah. They stick to the darih,
Yes.
and they start to touch the case of the darih and walk all the way around the darih. No, you have to be outside the Kaaba. I mean, you shouldn't actually touch the Kaaba and
I've
to be
heard
attached to the
also-
Kaaba and do the tawaf.
We also mentioned when you were in the ihram, you were saying that not to have perfume on, and the Holy Kaaba, the cloth that they have on it is drenched in perfume. So it's really, really important that you don't touch it while you're doing the tawaf, because you know your ihram technically would become batil.
Let me mention a hadith, interesting hadith about the Kaaba itself, this area or this part of the Holy Land. From Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, إن الله عز وجل أغرق الأرض كلها يوم نوح. Allah Azza wa Jal, when He drowned all the earth on the day of the Nuh, in other words, the Noah's Ark,
Yes.
Noah's Ark, when He saved Noah and those who were with them, on that day, the whole earth was drowned in water.
Wow.
Everything. إلا البيت, except the holy Kaaba, the Bayt, the house of God. فيومئذ سمي العتيق, and that's why it was called العتيق. So what does العتيق means?
Yes.
لأنه أعتق من الغرق. عتيق أعتق means it's like freeing a slave. So you see, I freed my slave. أعتقت خادمي or عبدي. So أعتق or عتيق means to free something, to release something. So that's why البيت العتيق, as they say, it means that this house, holy house, or this part of the Holy Land, the Kaaba, was released and freed from being drowned. So maybe the water came and circled around the Holy Kaaba. I don't know how Allah Azza wa Jal protected this part of land from drowning. But this is actually one of the meanings of Al-Bayt al-Atiq.
That sounds excellent. Sheikhna, what about performing extra tawaf? What's the criteria for that? Especially once you've done the 7 mandatory ones. So you've done 7 rounds of tawaf. Or what if you want to do extra?
Sometimes it happens that you miscalculate your tawaf and you end up doing 8/9 of tawaf, set of tawaf or sessions of tawaf. If you are still on the first one and you haven't completed the first tawaf, which means number 8. So you've done the 7 tawafs, that's it, all gone. But now you're inside your 8th tawaf. Of course, this is going to be a new set of tawaf, new sessions of tawaf. If it's less than, or you haven't completed the first round, then of course it is wajib to halt and stop the tawaf.
Okay.
In this situation. But if it was 1 or more than tawaf, you've been on the 9th or 10th of your tawaf, then the one should complete, as a precaution, to complete the tawaf. And hence the second tawaf is counted as a mustahab tawaf. And then you have the salah of the first and the second as well to be done.
So basically do another set of 7, you're saying?
Exactly, so it's going to be 14.
14 in total.
In total.
And 14 Masumeen, mashallah.
Inshallah.
Sheikhna, a question from the email, and it is that, what is the ruling if one who is muhrim halts his tawaf due to the obligatory salah? Does he need to start the tawaf anew or resume his tawaf from where he left off? I am a muqallid of His Eminence Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani. So according to Sayyid Sistani, if one is doing tawaf, has to stop, let's say the person did 3, had to stop, pray his salah, dhuhr, asr prayer, get back up, what does he do? Does he go back to where he left and continue that tawaf, or does he have to start a new tawaf again? Or does he have to start from scratch, from 0?
No, basically he needs to complete his tawaf after the salah from where he stopped.
Okay.
So let's say it was in this spot
One of the corners.
Of the corners. And then the adhan was called, of course, you're forced to stop your tawaf. They will stop all the tawaf. In the wajib salat times, they stop everyone doing the tawaf. So you have to, at the end of the day, you're compelled and forced to stop your tawaf. So you sit there, I don't know, you want to pray or whatever you want to do, but afterwards you have to go back on the same spot and resume your tawaf. That's how it works.
I see. Shaykhna, how long a gap does there need to be between tawaf and its salah?
Well, it really depends on the common norms of the urf. So between the tawaf and the salah shouldn't be a long gap, long duration. But 20 minutes, we can say it's something normal, but no more than, and if you want to leave the haram and go and have, go back to your hotel, I mean, you can't really do this. It's going to be a long gap and you're leaving the place. And so 20 minutes would be something normal. Let me just mention also a hadith with this regard about the tawaf, about the Hajj. عن أبي عبد الله عليه السلام قال
This is Imam Sadiq.
سلام الله عليه والذي بعث بالحق محمدا صلى الله عليه وآله بشيرا ونذيرا. He swears by the Prophet of Allah Azza wa Jal that he who sent him as a warner and as a glad tider, giving glad tidings to the mu'mineen, to the people. لقضاء حاجة امرئ مسلم وتنفيس كربته, fulfilling the need of the Muslim, trying to answer to the call of the Muslim who is in need, and to relieve his anxiety. أفضل من حجة وطواف وحجة وطواف وحجة وطواف حتى عد 10. The Imam mentioned 10 times حجة وطواف حجة وطواف حجة وطواف. The Imam says to fulfill the need, to answer the need of a Muslim who is in need. Could be financial, could be service, could be anything. When you fulfill this need of this mu'min, of this Muslim, and to relieve his anxiety, to bring joy to his heart, the Imam Salamullah alayhi says it's greater than and better than Hajj and Tawaf. Imagine.
Wow,
Imagine the one who, of course, we have to see this because we have to look at the meaning of the Hajj and Tawaf. Is it the wajib or the mustahab? So, because the wajib is wajib, you can't run away from the wajib. You can't say I'm gonna fulfill the needs of the mu'mineen. I'm not gonna go to Hajj because I'm actually serving the mu'mineen in my country. So I'm getting the Tawaf. No, the wajib stays wajib. You have to go to the Hajj, your first ever Hajj of Hajjat al-Islam. You have to do it. The rest of the Hajj, you want to do mustahab, of course, that's up to you. But the Imam says it's to basically qada al-haja of the Muslim is greater than the Hajj and Tawaf.
Sheikh, which act comes after Tawaf?
Now we have the third act of the Umrah. We're still in the Umrah, we haven't reached the Hajj. A'mal and the Hajjat al-Islam, as mentioned, the Arafah and so forth. After you have done the Tawaf, you have the Salah of the Tawaf, 2 rak'ah. After you finish the Tawaf, you do the 2 rak'ah of Salah of the Tawaf. And of course, it has to be done either next or behind the maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So somewhere near this maqam to offer this Salah. And of course, you have to be in cleanness and tahara and wudu and so forth to do the Salah. And it's like this morning Salah, 2 rak'ah Salah, with the intention of Salat al-Tawaf. There's a hadith they mentioned about the rewards of praying in Masjid al-Haram, next to the Kaaba. Imam al-Baqir Salamullah alayhi says, Salatun fil Masjid al-Haram. To pray one Salah in Masjid al-Haram, next to the Kaaba, near the Kaaba, أفضل من 100,000 صلاة في غيره من المساجد. It's greater than 100,000 Salah prayed in other masajid. Imagine, one Salah would be greater than praying 100,000 in other masajid. So it's a great opportunity for the one who goes there, not to just, do the Tawaf and Salah of the Tawaf sa'i and taqsir and then leave the haram and then come back after a few days. No, try to be there every day. Try to pray your mustahab, your qada al-walidain of salah, whatever you have the salah of mustahabbat, to do it there to get this 100,000 thawab of this praying in this holy and sacred place.
Excellent. Sheikh, now we're going to go to a break now. Please join us after the break as we continue our discussion on Hajj and also taking some of your live questions after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ahkam SOS. Just a quick reminder to all our viewers, our brothers and sisters that are watching, that if you have a question you'd like to ask, and it can be on any topic in regards to Islamic law, there's nothing silly or taboo, or there's nothing that, you know, you may feel that I'm not really comfortable in discussing. We don't ask you your name. We don't need to know your name or where you're sending your question from. Just give us the question, and inshallah, me and the Sheikh will do our research and do our best to get you the answers. Send the question via WhatsApp, send it via an email, or alternatively, give us a call live on the show, and inshallah, me and the Sheikh will be more than happy to discuss your question. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum.
Sheikhna, we were discussing the tawaf at the moment, and you mentioned even like, you know, after the tawaf you can do mustahab tawaf. Also, there's a prayer to do after. Is there anything to do after the tawaf and the salah?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The third amal, an act of the Umrah, is to go to the area of the mountain of Safa and Marwa.
Yes.
Very close to the Kaaba area. Just a bit of walk, and you arrive in that sacred land as well. So the sa'i, another wajib, you have to go, you start with mountain of Safa, 7 times, 7 rounds,
Okay.
and you end in Marwa. So Safa to Marwa, and then Marwa to Safa, until you end in Marwa. So Safa is the first, and you end the 7th in
and it's not Safa to Marwa and back to Safa. That's not one round, is it?
No, it's 1,
Safa
2,
to
3.
like that.
Exactly.
Okay. Laps.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
see. Ahsan.
Of course, the niyyah, again, it's part of the worship, and you have to have the niyyah to perform this act.
Ahsan. Sheikh, according to His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, are we allowed to have a break in between? I mean, it is difficult. Imagine there's a big crowd. Some people aren't over the best fitness that they can even run, because you're supposed to run between the two. You're not supposed to walk or jog. You're supposed to run between the two. I remember when I went, there was these lights that tell you where to start running, when to stop running, and so forth. Green lights. So according to Sayyid Sistani, Hafadullah, can we have a little bit of a break for some people?
The Sayyid mentions that as a matter of precaution, the Hajj should observe the order of the rounds between the Safa and the Marwa. However, in the course of performing the sa'i, yes, it is permissible to sit in Safa. You know, I'm sure you've seen some people sit on the mountain of Safa, have a rest for a few minutes, or Marwa, for example. And even Sayyid mentions in between they can also have the rest. But again, he would do the ihtiyat as a matter of precaution. He says that avoiding having a break. But he's allowing it, so it's better to have, you know, to not to have the break, but you are allowed if you're, you know, tired and exhausted. But it's better always to finish the amal, and you can have rest afterwards, back in the hotel or accommodation, and you can, you know, have rest all day.
So, Sheikh, what comes after the sa'i?
After completing the sa'i, of course, and when you finish in Marwa, at the end there, you go and do the taqsir, or to trim your hair, if you're a man, your beard, or even to clip your fingernails, you're allowed.
Okay.
So you choose one of them to actually do the taqsir of these. So it's up to you. And again, with the niyyah, with the intention that I do taqsir for Umrat al-Tamattu', كذا كذا قربة الله تعالى, and you clip your, as I've said, fingernails, or you take a bit of your beard or the hair, and you just trim it and cut it.
So, like, what comes after that? As in, are you now free from your ihram duties? Are you allowed to, like, put, you know, perfume on now? Are you allowed to scratch yourself and everything? Have you been relieved from those duties or those conditions?
Yes, indeed, you are now halal to do anything because now you are free from ihram restrictions, but except with two things. Two things become still and remain prohibited and haram to do. And that's because of the sanctity and the sacredness of the site, of the area. Number one is hunting in the haram. You're not allowed to hunt. Especially in the old days, because the area in Mecca was almost a sandy area.
Yeah.
Now it's built up, mashallah, and so forth. So you can't hunt. And number two, you're not allowed to uproot the haram's trees and vegetations and so forth. So you can't uproot them and take them out. So these are the two haram acts remain that you're not allowed to do while you're in the haram area.
Shaykhna, if there is a sister who wants to go and perform Hajj and she has the finances to do it herself, but her husband is in a bit of debt, so is she allowed to abandon the Hajj and use that money to pay for the husband, to help the husband and pay off his debt? Or, does Hajj remain a wajib and she has to go perform Hajj because she has the money to do so?
You see, if the months of Hajj approached and she has that money that allow her to go for Hajj and, of course, makes her mustati' to go to perform the acts of Hajj, then the Hajj becomes obligatory and wajib on her. But if she had paid this money to remove the debts from her husband's financial issues before the months of Hajj, let's say in Rajab and Sha'ban, for example, 3 months before the season of Hajj, which starts in Shawwal, then there's no obligation for her to perform Hajj. If she had paid all this money to the debtors, for example, she doesn't have to go to Hajj and perform Hajj because she paid all this money before the season of Hajj.
Shaykhna, moving away from Hajj now, what are the prohibited sale transactions?
You see, we have many issues in terms of selling and buying. Lots of ahkam are there. We have a full chapter in the books of the fiqh by our ulama called Kitabul Bay', Kitabul Mu'amalat, the book of selling and buying, the book of transactions. And they mention all types of sales which are allowed, which are not allowed, for example. In overall, we are not allowed to deceive or cheat people in transactions. It's not allowed. I'm not allowed to sell the milk mixed with water to people unless I mention it.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah, we have in this country a lot of honesty here.
Yeah.
They mention even the percentage.
Yes.
This much water, this much, the juice that we buy.
Yeah.
This much water, this much is juice.
Even if it's from a fruit, natural fruit, or it's
Exactly.
from flavorings or whatever, everything's mentioned.
Exactly. So to be honest with people in trade, that's important. That is an Islamic value and Islamic ethics, that you are honest with the one who you are buying or selling to. So away from cheat, away from fraud, away from deceptions and so forth. We have a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. He says, whoever deceives a Muslim in buying or selling, he is not one of us. So important that to be part of this community of believers, of mu'mineen, of Muslims, to avoid this kind of transactions, the haram and forbidden transactions, in which I would not only, dealing with the haram, but feeding my family haram as well. So that's important to also bear in mind.
Shaykhna, what is the ruling in regards to leather from non-Muslim countries? Especially sometimes this leather is not from, normal animals which we eat. Mathalan, cows or sheep. Sometimes the leather is from a different animal. It could be like, crocodile, snake, fox, and so forth. So what is the ruling in regards to that?
If this animal was killed in a haram way, as you mentioned, the cow, or the animal was fox and so forth, and of gushing animal's blood when it's slaughtered, then the leather becomes najis. This is the problem. And that's why we try to avoid buying belts and shoes and bags and so forth from the non-Muslim countries if it's a genuine leather, animal leather. So we try to buy these types of necessities, like the shoes and so forth, from Muslim country, because they mainly made it from the cows, halal cows, slaughtered. The leather is halal, and so forth. But from non-Muslims is an issue that we have to avoid.
I see. Sheikhna, unfortunately, a lot of us, we do go through this where a family member passes away. And sometimes we are lucky enough to send that body back to, our motherland and back to a holy place like, Karbala or Najaf, or back to a Muslim countries such as Pakistan, Iran, and so forth. However, it's not always the case. It can be very, very difficult. It can be very, very expensive. As Muslims, are we allowed to bury our marhum in graveyards of non-Muslims, but of the Ahl al-Kitab, such as the Christians and also the Jews, who have similar, theology / burial rites as we do? What does Ayatollah Sistani have to say about this?
Yes, he is very clear that it is not permissible to bury the Muslim in non-Muslim cemeteries, like the Christian or the Jews cemeteries. And of course, they have their own even Ahkam and rules. The Jews are buried in a separate cemetery. The Christians and also the same. They go their own graveyards, and the Muslims as well. So you can't pick and mix and bury the Muslim in a non-Muslim graveyard. The Sayyid says, except if that is only out of absolute necessities. The body will be left, rotting, for example, or in the fridge for the next few months. You can't leave the body like that. So, absolute necessity, then you are allowed to bury it in such graveyards.
Alhamdulillah. I think what happens these days is that Muslim communities purchase land in these graveyards, and they reserve it just for the Muslims and so forth. Sheikh, if someone is to die and let's say this person wasn't married, didn't have children, maybe there's no family, who is to take charge of this person's dead body?
If somebody can contact the heirs and the inheritors of this individual who can handle the body, then that's fine. They can come and take over. Otherwise, it becomes obligatory as a wajib kifa'i on the Muslims, that the group of Muslims come forward and take care and handle the body of this Muslim. Because if one person took over, then it will be not wajib for the rest of the Muslims to deal with the body of this Muslim. So if you can find somebody from his family, then they can take over. Otherwise, any Muslim who is available should at least one or two to come and handle the burial of this believer.
Sheikhna, when it comes to the arcades of the Ma'sumin, a woman on her menses cycle, on her menstruation period, Hayd, is she allowed to pass through the arcade?
Yes, it is permissible, but to make sure that she doesn't go inside the shrine itself, the darih, next to the darih area, where it's all been close to that area. Outside the area should be fine. So just be careful about it.
Sheikhna, got a question here from the email saying and asking, what is the ruling concerning the moisture that is transferred from non-Muslims to the items that we handle in the shop, such as, a milk carton or a loaf of bread or a box of cereal, and such, that considering that awkwardness that this causes, if they were to be prevented from touching these items?
You see, initially anything that you see or been told that it's najis, then it's najis. You have to be certain that this is najis, this item is najis. Otherwise, everything is tahir, unless you're told and certain that this item remains najis. However, the moisture is najis, of course, of somebody who is not, according to some ulama, that the non-Muslims are najis in overall. But if you're sure that they have touched with their own hands, wet hands, on this carton, on this, and on a box of, chocolate and so forth, of course, then you have to wash it or avoid it. But otherwise, things will remain as tahir unless you're sure about it. I know some families, some people would, whenever they go and buy, let's say, milk, bottles of milk, a drink, whatever, from the fridge, they would wash it just in case.
Okay.
But you have no evidence that somebody came, or the guy who brings and puts them on the shelf, he touched them with his own wet hand, for example. You can't prove it, so it remains tahir unless you saw it with your own eyes, or somebody told you that, well, he was with his wet hand touching these bottles, for example. Otherwise, they're tahir.
Hassan. A question from the WhatsApp, if I may. Assalamu alaikum, great show, as always. Message from Germany, believe it or not. I just wanted to ask, is it allowed to wear a tie in Islam? So I'm assuming it's the normal tie that we see, the working tie, not the bow tie, which, you know, is more for dressing up and for special occasions. But wearing a tie, acceptable or not acceptable in Islam?
Yes, it is permissible. The one is allowed to wear the tie. However, some ulama would mention that it is makruh or undesirable to actually wear the tie. But anyhow, they say that it's allowed and you can actually wear the tie. It's not haram.
Sheikh, you know that, recently, well, not recently, still going on, we have COVID-19, there's been quarantine and lockdown. So this has resulted in us having our, Islamic programs online, whether it is Ahkam SOS like this, which we did online, mashallah, a couple of weeks ago, or if it is a majlis, or it is, it's a function for a qasida or so forth. Sometimes it's sisters only. And, sometimes it's a sister dhakir reciting, or a sister reciting majlis, or reciting Quran, or reciting poetry. Is it acceptable, permissible for the men to hear this as well? Or should it be strictly for the sisters only to listen to?
If their recitation is actually was not recited or spoken too softly, because usually women, they have
soft voices, yes.
Voices. So if it was just normal tune, then that's fine. Because the Holy Quran states, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ, and do not speak softly. That will attract the opposite gender. This is one of the methods or ways in which attracts the other side. It's not just the makeup or the look or the body curves and so forth. Sometimes even the voice can attract. So if it was just a normal recitation without any attraction, temptation, that's fine. If there is a softly spoken or recited, then of course there is an issue with it, and one should avoid it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sheikh. Thank you for all those who are joining us today. Inshallah, we'll be back on Wednesday at 6:30 for another live show. If you have any questions you'd like to ask us, please send them via the WhatsApp or the email address, and inshallah, me and Sheikh will address them on the next episode. Until then, stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.